Hello, Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Andrei Martyanov, and we're going to talk about the obvious. The United States has lost military supremacy, and Andrei wrote a book about that a while back. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we're hanging out with Andrei Martyanov. Don't forget, he's got a great YouTube show. It's called Smoothie X12. It's one of my favorite. He does like 30-minute or so deep dives into a lot of issues. It's funny, it's fun, it's informative. You're really going to enjoy it. Smoothie X12. That is Andrei Martyanov's YouTube page and show, and also Reminiscence of the Future. We're going to look at that in a few minutes. At some point, we'll look at that. But here's something we're going to talk about. I'm going to present this, and I think it's getting kind of obvious that Andrei was well ahead of the curve. Here's a book. Losing Military Supremacy by Andrei Martyanov, The Myopia of American Strategic Planning. Time after time, the American military has failed to match lofty declarations about its superiority, producing instead a mediocre record of military accomplishments. Well, you were quite charitable saying that they have a mediocre record. I would use terms that would be far less charitable. They lost to the Houthis. The US, we're a superpower, man, super duper. I read Trump's tweets, the most powerful military in the world ever. We've got everything. Nobody can touch us. And they go to the Houthis, and the Houthis like run them out of the Red Sea. They're running for their lives. A plane sliding overboard, people running in every direction, trying to explain why mysteriously a couple of sailors died. We're supposed to think they slipped on a banana peel on the deck when we're like, I think they got lost in some kind of an operation. Anyway, here's my point. Losing military supremacy. Based on what you wrote back in 2018, bring us forward today to where we are. The special military operation, the loss, I don't know what we call it, the Battle of the Houthis, whatever you want to call it, the Battle of the Red Sea. Compare what you've seen since to what your thoughts and predictions were in that book.
Well, fact is, the book was written in 2017, and it was getting ready to print in early 2018, and then suddenly on 1st March 2018, Mr. Putin addresses the Federal Assembly and unveils those things, which everybody said, oh no, boutique weapons, they are Putin's cartoons. But my editor said, please, you have to write about it. Okay, so I basically wrote a couple more chapters to this book, and it came out in print later. Obviously, it was delayed because of that. So, but yeah, it was based on the, I tried to do it with the deepest respect possible to some accomplishments, obviously, United States Army and the United States, especially Navy, they have some magnificent, fought some magnificent battles, and they won the war in the Pacific, essentially, albeit the Red Army also helped tremendously by destroying the Kwantung Army in China. But the point is that it was already clear in 2015, 2016 that basically everything what has been told about the American military was primarily what Obama at that time stated that, oh yeah, we are the finest fighting force in history. And I always repeated, by the way, I also had the interview with the radio about an hour ago, and I also repeated it. Okay, we have Napoleon, Genghis Khan, Alexander Nevsky, von Manstein, Zhukov and Rokossovsky spinning in their graves when they learned that the United States Army is the finest fighting force in history. And the point is, evidently, there is a loss of the touch with the reality, military historical reality. And the United States was always primarily naval power, which obviously manifested itself during World War II. But when you look attentively at the World War I and World War II, in both cases, United States in the top, entering those wars in the end, when essentially the issue was largely decided, and especially in the World War II. And now, yeah, we have the basically the non-stop cases of stolen valor, especially by Mr. Trump, who says, of course, that United States defeated Hitler single-handedly. But yeah, Russians kind of they're a sideshow, a little bit things there, and that tells you everything you need to know about the cultural level. There's no class. American elites do not have class, and they are highly uncultured people. And Mr. Trump is essentially the manifestation, embodiment of all this mode of thinking. And as a result, when you live in this delusion, you inevitably going to destroy your surroundings. And that's exactly what is happening. And that was predicted by me that, yeah, they wanted to see the real war. Well, one of the reasons for that was the fact that they have been so much sure, Pentagon, all those strategies, all those, about a technological superiority that they didn't recognize that when Russia, even when it was poor and essentially destroyed, and was forced to do some literally, selling out, not just selling, but selling out things in 1990s in military industrial field, in technological field, uh, it should have been sending shock waves to intelligence community. And for some people it did. At that time there were still a number of competent people. When Russians started to roll out things like, latest cruise missiles, all those S-300s, PMUs 1 and 2, and you look at those capabilities, it's like, good Lord, U.S. military has nothing on that, the intent, but people didn't get the message, despite the fact that many professionals were writing about it. And then you have this new generation of Russian submarines, and and at some point of time, they thought that Russia really got stuck in 1990s, and then by 2015, when Russians hit the ISIS from Caspian Sea, from those small missile ships which fly those cruise missiles, at almost 2,000 kilometers, and like, how did they do that? Well, because, if you didn't know, Russians do have satellites, they have, armed forces, they have economy, which is not 1990s, it was 2015. And then, of course, that have been explained that without understanding the warfare, and without understanding what continental warfare entails, and why Russia inevitably can exist only in the form of superpower, not necessarily empire, but superpower, and why it is predestined, or this is in cultural DNA of Russians, who never will, agree to any kind of the secondary role globally, not because they want to actually, become an empire or capture those territories, exploit those colonies. And no, because Russians do not like war. And because of that, they hate war, because this is the nation which made sacrifices which are, for example, beyond the grasp of any American military people or intelligence people. They can play the, sort of sound bites that, oh yeah, Leningrad, but do you understand what it means? And I always say, not a single American serviceman ever died in defending United States in their modern, modern era. I mean, even when we look at the Pacific Campaign, it was so far away from the territory of the United States. Not a single American, with the exception of this unlucky family from Oregon, which stepped on the mine, which was sent by the balloon by Japanese in 1944, I believe. They stepped on it in Oregon forest while going for mushrooms, and they died, which is a tragedy. But 27 million people, again, when I speak about the scale of things, Leningrad alone, Leningrad besieged in less than 900 days, 897 or something like that, close to 900 days of the siege. They lost more people, primarily civilians, but very many, obviously, military people, which is amounted to 1.5 million. Then the United States lost in all of its wars combined throughout the history. So, and that is why, for example, one of those things which you bring people to Leningrad or St. Petersburg, and you bring them to the Piskarev cemetery, okay? It's 500,000 people there, civilians primarily in the, those mass graves. Many people still cannot grasp it. Which we spoke today, Larry, me, and our friend from New York, is that when Soviet Red Army lost about 900,000 KIAs in Stalingrad battle alone. And actually, Germans also lost catastrophic number, many hundreds of thousands KIAs. Many people don't grasp. And when they talk about, for example, Stalingrad battle, which saw 2.2 million casualties on both sides, okay? And this was the battle which started essentially in August in earnest of 1942 and ended with the February 5 of 1943. Many people talk about this, Paulus VI army. They forget that the half of the fourth German army was also destroyed. And then you had armies of Hungary, Italy, Romania. People still cannot even grasp the scale of these things, and when you do not have the military which can really understand what it's dealing with and what is Russian military culture, inevitably they were bound to basically convince themselves that they are the greatest thing ever. And then as a result, they missed the pretty much organic, natural for Russians military industrial development. And then suddenly one day comes and like, oh my God, well, yeah, didn't I warn you 8 years ago that you already do not have this age, which you thought you had, let's say, in 1980s, just to give you an example. In 1970s, the Soviet Union lagged in terms of the quieting technology behind the US Navy. Soviet nuclear submarines, not diesel. Diesels were extremely quiet. But because they're diesel electric, they operate on the electric motor and they do not have to run this reactor. They run on batteries, essentially. So they had this issue. And those first and second generation of Soviet submarines, they lagged in terms of the sonar technology and quieting. It doesn't mean that they were defensive, by no means. They still could be a very dangerous, opponent. But the United States led that. And then suddenly, what happens in 1977, Russians dropped this bomb, which is called the Victor III class SSN, nuclear-powered submarine. And then suddenly it's pretty quiet, suddenly. High level of automation, very advanced electronic. And then in 1986, you have the first Project 971, Akula 1. And the whole US Navy is in shock, But they were leading, and then suddenly they had, Russians are catching up. Now Russians not only caught up, already starting in 1990s, the quieting and reducing of the physical fields of submarine, Russians have been equal to the US Navy submarine force in this respect. Now, ask any normal and honest American submariner if he wants to commanding officer of the Virginia class, say, if he wants to deal with something like Yasin class, Project 885, nobody wants to deal with that, because they're so quiet. It's just organic thing. You have this race, you compete, and the United States, for some reason, decided that, we achieved everything. We're the greatest ever.
Part of, I think, what we're looking at, too, is this. Okay, I've got super carriers, and there was a time when that was very intimidating and telling things. I think this was telling. The Russians had like one left, and they just says, screw it, and they parked it. And the Americans were like, look how weak the Russians are. They don't even have one anymore. And I'm thinking, maybe they've come to the conclusion that is not beneficial to them in the method of warfare they chose. But it came to me this. The other part of it is this. If you got something, the bigger it is, the easier it is to hit.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And number two, if I have an aircraft carrier, any kind of thing, what kind of planes does it have? What kind of missiles does it have? If I've
Yeah,
got a missile corvette or whatever, what kind of missiles does it have? I mean, I could have all of these surface ships and all of these other things, which are targets in today's world. But what are they firing? To me, that's the only thing that matters. And how many do they fire? We're looking and they're like, they're running out of this, running out of that. Even if our missiles were good, which they aren't, we don't have enough of them and we can't make them fast enough.
yeah, yeah. And I always mention this wonderful article by again when the time when U.S. military had real thinkers, strategic thinkers, and people, and it was by Admiral Stansfield Turner, the friend of the chief of naval on the operations Elmo Zumwalt, and then later Stansfield Turner became obviously the CIA director. But he wrote the article, in interview actually, to the Christian Science Monitor in 1976. And the name of the title of the interview was "Whose Navy is Better?" And Turner brilliantly, being brilliant mind, himself. Can you imagine? American military produced some wonderful, actually tremendous thinkers, So, and he explains that it all depends on the task. It all depends on what kind of task you are trying to fulfill. For some tasks, the aircraft carriers are good. For others, Russians are better. And it's not about just the number of the hulls which you produce. It's what kind of tasks you assigned to, fulfill. And just that's how strategists think. But wonderful interview, which explained obviously, and we also know that Elmo Zumwalt already in 1970, when he became the chief of naval operations, he knew this whole carrier thing was. That's why, they were in danger. They were dying breed. Once the range of their cruise missiles, anti-shipping cruise missiles by Soviet Union, became comparable to the range of the carrier aviation, that was it. At that time, don't forget, they didn't have all those, gliding bombs and things like that. No, you had this, whatever, Skyhawk or whatever, something else, which was Corsair, fly from the deck. They had these free falling bombs, and so they have to enter the air defense zone of the ship and, things like that. And then suddenly they say, yeah, well, US Navy has this advantage, Soviets have this advantage, and they were looking at this seriously. But then what happened? You had this, what is called the carrier trade union. That was the name which was given to them by none other than Elmo Zumwalt, Admiral Zumwalt himself. And he said that they didn't want anything. They were actually the guys who effectively sabotaged the development of the Harpoon anti-shipping missile. It still came out in the production, but they actually gave the message to Elmo Zumwalt through all kinds of things, including recovery is the whole other thing. And they told him, no, range of this Harpoon missile cannot be longer than 50 kilometers. The question why? Well, because otherwise that means what? It diminishes the role of the carrier aviation. And that was already in 1970. So guess what? Fast forwarded to 15 years. Russians deploy already this Oscar 1 and Oscar 2 submarines, which carry 600 plus kilometer range supersonic Granite missiles, P700. And US aviation still flies this. Oh, yeah, we have Tomahawk. That's fine. The problem is, what are you going to do when you have the salvo of, let's say, 12 of those Granites? You don't have air defense system which can stop them. Well, there is another problem then. By the time already Zumwalt was from 1970 to 1974, then Holloway comes, his friend, but aircraft carrier guy. So by the time this all happens, mid-70s, Soviet Navy, Gorshkov's Navy already had the thing which actually US Navy also today looks with the horror. Those two Tu-22Ms. And what they are? They are the supersonic bombers, but each of them carried 3 X-22 long-range Mach 4.2 anti-shipping missile. And what happens that at that time, when the Soviet Navy was calculating, and they understand, they say, okay, if we have the carrier battle group going against us, let's say, imagine that, okay, it's a summer, all at that time steam catapults didn't operate that well in the even summer cold conditions of the, let's say, Barents Sea, and they say, okay, they want to attack the main base in, Murmansk, for example, or go into the Mediterranean. What do you need to stop basically the whole aircraft carrier group at that time, 70s? Well, they calculate and say, okay, we need 2 regiments of the Tu-22s. Well, the regiment ranges between, if they're large bombers, and could be 6, up to 12. So they knew we're going to lose 1 regiment of those bombers, but that guarantees the sinking of the whole carrier battle group. Okay, so, and there we go. And guess what? Today we came to what essentially it was in the works since 1970s, and we ended up with this technological paradigm, which is, of course, okay, Russians have 2,500 kilometer range hypersonic Kinjal, which is, you don't want to meet that thing, which is carried by not only MiG-31Ks anymore, it is also carried by Su-34 fighter bombers, which are very serious aircraft. Then you have X-32. It's a much more advanced version, much more electronic warfare resistant. Mach 4.5 X-32 with a range of 1,000 kilometers. You have Zircon, with the range of hypersonic Zircon, which is Mach 10, with the range of 1,500 kilometers. And all of that beyond the furthest range of the detection of the E-2 Hawkeye, which is the eyes and ears of the carrier battle group. So what do you have? You have sitting ducks. And
Yeah.
Mr. Shoigu, about 3 or 4 years ago, before he was promoted actually to the position of the deputy chair, secretary of Russia Security Council, while being Minister of Defense, I posted it many times. He said, it doesn't mean that Russia will not have carriers. They will be different, but he said, why do we need carriers when we need to sink them? And we can sink them. So that's simple as that. And that's the problem. United States is mandated by the act of the Congress to have 11 carriers. And the famous good old World War I proverb, and that's British proverb actually. Do you want to bankrupt the country? Make a present of the battleship to it. So that's, you want to bankrupt the United States? Let them have 11 carriers. Apart from the fact you cannot even put them all together simultaneously. Some of them are in a refit, others are being, serviced and things like that. And you look at this and it's just like, why do they even do this? I understand they want to project power, but as you correctly stated, what do we have? Houthis? Operation Prosperity Guardian? How well did it go? Tell me. And these are the guys who have Soviet 1950s and 1960s anti-shipping cruise missiles, which are P-15 and P-20 Terrorite. Those are not in production anymore. They do not exist in any quantities except for what they got during Soviet Union courting all those, the Arab countries, and including Yemen, 1970s, early 1980s. And yet, using drones and those old missiles, they absolutely choked the choke point of the Red Sea. That's why it's called choke point. Well, these are the guys who, good Lord, they wear sandals and turbans. And they managed to do that.
Well, let me ask you this: if you looked at what happened they called you in, the government called you in and said, okay, Andrei, review what happened in Iran, the strength and the weaknesses, and we want to shore up Iran because they're coming back. And when they come back, we want to be ready. What do you think? What would you do differently? What would you change to shore Iran up for the next round if Israel and or the United States attacks it?
Well, I'm about to drop very interesting sensational bomb, which many people were suspecting. Iran already has Su-35s, and it has them more than 4. Russia is ready to supply 2 squadrons, 24. So that will be the first thing to do, because Su-35 is just a monster of a plane. So, and F-35 is not even, with all the stairs and all that, it's all crap. But yes, there will be, which is happening as we speak, and you already know, we discussed it with you too, that Mr. Defense Minister of Iran not only spoke to Mr. Belousov on the phone call, they also met personally in, during the meeting of the couple days ago, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So there is now this story that they want to buy J-10s, C export version of this is a light single engine Chinese fighter. So
that's a pretty good plane, isn't it? It's a pretty good plane, isn't it?
It's a decent plane. So, I mean, there are 2 different, again, it's in no way interferes with each other. Su-35 is a completely different story.
Right.
And it's ongoing, and they already have it. So now the question is how fast Chinese may provide, let's say, I mean, again, 24, 36, 3 squadrons of those planes. 1.5 2 years probably to complete that. They probably can get them up front. Not many, but 6, 8 at least. And again, it depends how they will approach with the J-10. Don't forget, J-10 is the 20-year-old aircraft.
Right.
They have many versions, and so it depends if the Chinese Air Force will be willing to part with their older versions, but with updated avionics and things like that. So that is the issue. And yeah, Russians can supply more Su-35s. And of course, the question is now, I'm pretty darn sure they are talking about now S-400s being a standard issue for, I mean, all things considered, Iranian air defense obviously performed more or less good. They provided the greatest obstacle for the aerial superiority for the Israeli Air Force. But now is the time to get into the real serious business. And the real serious business are the latest versions of S-300s and S-400. And Russians are ready. And I'm pretty sure that's what in the works right now. And this is just the start. There are many other things which Iran will need, and Russia is ready. Will make it available. Obviously, Russia can supply Panzers, and Panzer is a rather impressive. And who knows, maybe Buk M3s. Buk M3 is, and there is another thing, and there is another complex which is now many people don't talk about it, but it's a star of the special military operation. It is a S-350 Vites a night. And they know this air defense complex, which is naval version of it, is Parliamentary Dud, which is carried by the frigates of Russian Navy, the latest frigates of Russian Navy. So that certainly, I'm absolutely positive, will be on the shopping list. And yeah, looks like Iran doesn't want to talk to this International Atomic Energy Agency, So, and yeah. Yep.
And so this, for people to know, this is the Buk M3 here. You can see it's sitting on a tracked vehicle. It is
it's totally net-centric. It is integrated with the other air defense complexes, either through Polyana, which is highly advanced, computerized, net-centric, the command post essentially for 14 plugins. You can plug in 14 complexes. But Buk M3 and the latest complexes, they are speaking also shooter to shooter. They have data link that they speak not only to Polyana, which battle manages their basically their area of their air defense, but they speak to each other and they can provide targeting to each other. So it's rather, it's very advanced. It's definitely, Iran has nothing which even remotely similar to that. Oh, it's all Panzer on the track. They decided to do it on the track, base. So, but Panzers, I'm not sure Iran needs it on the track chassis. I'm pretty sure that They probably gonna get their regular Kamaz-based trucks, so yeah, there's a lot to be gained for Iran. I hope they learned their lesson. And judging by the activity between Iran and Russia in the last 2 weeks, yeah, they are undertaking. I haven't heard from Pezeshkian anymore. It's like the guy literally evaporated, with his, the negotiations. So we know that it is there right now. It is run by Khamenei. Khamenei delegated his power to primarily the guards of the Islamic Revolution, the core of the guards of the Islamic Revolution, and so that's probably what is driven by them.
I think he's come to the conclusion that his country is at war, that it will be at war for the foreseeable future, and that he needs to hand it over to the people who do war. That now they need to do politics, they don't need to do diplomacy, they need to be ready to do war, and he needs to hand it to the people to do it. Kind of like, would that be kind of like, I guess it's different than the Russians' general staff, right?
No, they have the general staff, but no, the Islamic, the core of the Islamic guards of the Islamic Revolution is a very bizarre organization. They are, I would say, combination of the political office,
right?
Yeah, it's very ideologically strict in the Islamic sense. Whatever they have this type of their, so to speak, doctrine there. It's really interesting. They are Shiites, okay? They are not Sunni Arabs. Don't ever call any Persian guy by mistake an Arab. That will be insult for them, So they are a very different type of organization. I would rather say they are security force. You could say, still, I think they have more even influence than KGB had, in the Soviet Union. So, I mean, that type of the security force, which has an enormous influence on the political process in Iran. And right now, it's not only because they do the war, it's because Pezeshkian essentially discredited himself. He and his constituents, they were talking about, no, let's talk to the West. They will lift the sanctions and they will reintegrate us to West and they will give us money back. Yeah, right. So this is the guy who wasted the time which could have been used to prepare Iran even more for what is coming. And what everybody knew, you cannot negotiate with the United States or the West, let alone Israel. And so now it looks like they achieved this understanding, and we'll have to wait and see when it comes up, so to speak, or comes into open, and we will be able to make make some judgments or conclusions on this matter. But I think that Moscow and Tehran are very actively talking to each other right now, and the same goes for Beijing.
Now this is the S-300 right here, right?
Yeah.
And so it appears that the other ones, the Buk, etc., they seem to have all their radar and everything all connected to one. What are they?
They also have different machines. Buk and Buk also has the different machines. They have their own radar. What you showed was a launcher, but yeah, S-300 has it's not the whole complement of S-300. They also have their special air search radar, which they have this telescopic mast, which goes up to 35 meters. It's more than 100 feet in the air, and that thing can scan it. That is why they are designed also to intercept low-flying targets. So yeah, it's they really need that, and they have this kind of knockoffs of the older versions. They really need state-of-the-art, cutting-edge technology, and Russia is ready to provide it.
So it seems to me that do the Russians also use electronic warfare along with these air defense systems, and how does that work?
Oh, no, it's absolutely integrated. It's always integrated. There are all kinds of jammers. There are all kinds of other things, which obviously you either have them in the separate units, such as you can have actually the whole electronic warfare brigade. Can you imagine? This is the highest tactical level. So which either are attached to whatever the thing is, but you also have the suit inside your modern complexes, which do have the ability to overcome the electronic countermeasures. So in this case, for example, there is like, oh yeah, there's some missile flies, and missile has all kinds of the electronic countermeasures which it tries to jam and things of this nature. Well, guess what? They can jam it back essentially, So, and they can develop firing solution. They will launch and they will shoot it down. So that was the modern, so to speak, air to ground and ground to air war became very sophisticated, very complex in terms of the magnetic spectrum. And so that's what we observe constantly right now, especially in Ukraine. And now we had this event, so to speak, those 12 days of fury. And again, the world changes with each of this thing. It's one step, one notch, changes to a completely different paradigm. And we live today in a completely different world. Many people still do not understand. But there will be no this, great American rah-rah or Western Europe rah-rah. NATO is a paper tiger. They are in shock. They are in shock from what they observed. And again, do not forget, Iran, and Vladimir Putin never says anything just because. When he says anything, it has the meaning, and it is designed specifically to be heard. When this whole thing started, he came on record immediately, and I quote him, said, "We offered military cooperation and air defense systems to Iran. They declined." That's Mr. Pezeshkian and all his cronies. So that's why. So Russians were offering it way before. They declined.
And the other thing he said that was interesting is when they said, well, what are you going to provide for them? And he says, depends on what they ask for.
Yeah. Su-35s was in the works for a while. Okay, but Raisi was still alive. Okay, if that would have been Mr. Raisi, this is Mr. Raisi who died in the Talish Mountains in Azerbaijan, and people say that it was the Mossad operation of things. And you know what? When you fly 50-year-old Huey, you may expect. I don't know why he was flying this. It's just absolutely, which brings up the other thing. They should have been flying on the proper, aircraft, and Russia can provide those, by the way. So that's the whole thing, And but yeah, it was started with Raisi, but Pezeshkian obviously had his own ideas. He wanted to reintegrate with the West. He had these delusions, let's put it this way. He doesn't understand that Iranians viewed by the West as also as subhumans, as Slavs are viewed. I'm Russian, so I'm subhuman in most, So and in this case, that's what is this all about, And now again, we'll have to wait and see. We are entering at a very, very interesting and volatile time. It is extremely volatile.
Well, Trump is tweeting again. Oh, we're going to talk with the Iranians and we'll negotiate. But if it doesn't work, there could be. In other words, he's already coming out saying, oh yeah, we'll go to war with them again. But here's the difference I see. Israel, yes, they had some success, but Israel has never been punched in the face like this. Israel got punched, and they've got to hide the damage they had, but they got some nasty strikes, and a lot of them. Israel was pulverized, I think. But Iran now has an opportunity to go say, all right, Russia, China, can you give me some help? I need this or that. What can you provide? Russia and China can sit down. They can say, what extra spare do we have? What can we provide? Work together, blah, blah, blah. And they can fortify the defenses. I'll put it to you like this. I don't think Iran needs help with missiles. They may need some more, but one thing for sure, their missiles are effective. Their missiles are quite effective.
Well, they are effective. They are not as advanced. For example, obviously, there's nothing which is as advanced as Russian missile arsenal. But you know what? Essentially, it's not even the treaty or anything. It was the regime of the non-proliferation of the cruise missiles with the missile technology with the ranges longer than 300 kilometers. That is why, for example, if you look attentively of all Russian anti-shipping missile ranges, which went on export, 300 kilometers, don't go any further. Well, guess what? This regime essentially is gone, as pretty much all arms control regime was destroyed by the United States and during the Bush, during all kinds of people like that. And of course, we remember Mr. Trump, Bush quit, Bush Jr. quit ABM treaty. Trump thought that because, he is simply an uninformed man, that, let's go and, abrogate INF treaty. Okay. Well, they didn't expect that. So, and as a result, who knows? Russia may supply things like Onyx with the range of 800 kilometers. Latest Onyxes are flying to a 1,000. So, and that changes, as you might understand.
Well,
and they are damn nasty missiles, So it's just.
Well, I think the point I was making was this. Okay. Really, I say Israel, but Israel's firing all U.S. stuff. It's stamped a few names on it. So Israel with the U.S. Western stuff, they went head to head, and Israel got punched pretty well, and their air defense system was a sieve. Basically, it was not very effective. Okay, now in the interim, the Iranians can advance their abilities. They're going to the Russians and Chinese, and they're getting newer stuff. They can get advanced missiles. They can get electro. They can significantly upgrade their capabilities. The only thing the Israelis can do is get more missiles or something. There's no further capabilities that the West has other than what they were using. So if they clash again and the Iranians have upgraded their capabilities and the Israelis haven't, it's going to go even worse for Israel the second time around, I would think.
Absolutely. And do not forget, Iran was counting, we know now this for sure, that on the protracted conflict, that eventually they will saturate and then deplete Israeli air defense, which they almost did. And after that they will launch things which they can intercept, and that would be it for Israel. It would be turned into the parking lot completely. And you're absolutely right. When you have Zionists screaming that Netanyahu is moron, and basically Israel was dealt damage in, and I quote, hundreds of billions of shekels. So their economy is basically destroyed. They destroyed their refineries. They destroyed their Rafael industrial park. They destroyed a bunch of the Mossad headquarters and special forces headquarters and things of this nature. So, and suddenly they have the chief of general staff of IDF and said, oh yeah, we're going to refocus 2 days ago. Oh, we're now going to refocus back to Gaza. Oh, how is that going in Gaza? You remember? It's a small piece of land which they still cannot, do anything about Hamas. They continue to kill civilian population. They continue the ethnic cleansing and genocide. But that's pretty much the extent of their capabilities. And so now, when we have these new facts beginning to kind of be available to us to analyze and see, yes, Iran is going to improve itself technologically dramatically. And as I already stated, they can close Hormuz Strait even now if they decide so, and that's the whole point. The moment they close the Hormuz Strait, Trump presidency is over. He will be impeached. Okay, so because American economy will crater, and this is that's why Trump and oil markets reacted positively by dropping the price. Well, they're speculators. They do not deal with the real prices of anything. But at least they knew when Trump contacted Tehran, the 24 hours before United States strike on those nuclear facilities, everybody knew it was over. They want to settle this thing down, and United States simply doesn't have resources now. If, of course, Russians provide a number of bastion complexes, that means that aircraft carrier groups better stay the hell away somewhere in Indian Ocean because,
what kind of, now the bastions are the anti-shipping, like a placement of missiles, like a group. What kind of missiles does that Bastion system, anti-shipping system, use? I know it's like a coastal anti-shipping system, but what kind of range does it have?
Sure. Initially, they were using P-800 Onyx. And Onyx is, well, the Onyx is 800-kilometer range. This is the latest version is 1,000. But Russian bastions are also fit, which of course Iran not gonna get it. But Russian bastions not only launch it, they already launched it in combat. They also launched the version of 3M22 Zircon, and that has been already tested in Ukraine. So no, Iran is not getting Zircon.
No, right.
But I mean. Even P-800 Onyx, even with 800-kilometer standard issue of the 800-kilometer range Onyx, because Russians have no need to really follow this regime, which was essentially the gentleman's handshake, and let's not do this. It never was a treaty or anything, just gentleman's agreement, essentially. Well, we know how gentleman in United States was. So, and once they get this, as I already stated, they push out immediately every single surface asset of the U.S. Navy, or for that matter, any NATO Navy, out to the Indian Ocean, because they will not be able to approach it without the danger, God forbids, to be hit. And when one Onyx can sink the destroyer. Yeah. So, yeah.
And you usually fire a salvo anyway, right? You would usually fire more than...
Yeah, if you have the what is called division. It's not division. It's division, although it derives from the same thing, but it's strictly Russian thing. It's a battery, let's say this. You have, let me remember, because I don't remember. I believe you have in the battery 4 vehicles, each of them 2 launchers, or 8. So 4 vehicles, 8 Onyxes. Good luck intercepting the salvo of the 8 Onyxes with Aegis, whatever, SM-6 and things like that. And those are nasty missiles. They use advanced algorithms. They repeat in many respects the same thing as what was P-700 Granite, which was still carried, but it's already getting old, where one of the missiles constantly corrects and manages the swarm of the other. It pops up, scans, it shoot and forget. Once you develop the coordinates and the firing solution, you know what, push button, start, you lower your launchers and get the hell out of the place. They fly on their own, and so they have those advanced algorithms. For some reason they call it artificial intelligence. It's neural network, that's what it is. And so they are capable to design their approach and attack on their own, and they will choose the most valuable target and they will attack it. So, or they can distribute themselves, for example, 2 for this destroyer, 2 for other destroyer, and then 2 or 4 for the aircraft carrier. This is how it works. And
so basically you fire a swarm of these missiles, and the missiles can look at the targets as they approach them and determine how to distribute themselves.
Yeah, well, they will be flying low, the sea skimmers. Then one of them will pop up and go down. It will get the scan on its homing device, which will have the picture of what they want to attack, and it will redistribute between the other missiles what they want to do. If somehow a missile, one of these missiles shut down, the other missile will pops up and they begin to talk. And this is how it worked already in the 1980s. So, and it decides what is the most important target in their, let's say, their group. They can approach it, they maneuver, including their violent anti-air defense missile maneuver, which reaches enormous G-forces. Plus, they can go around if need be and attack from the other side.
What kind of warheads do they carry?
Onyx carries about 350 kilograms, which is 700 pounds of the high explosives. And plus, don't forget, it approaches the terminal with Mach 2.9 almost. So, yeah, multiplied it, the energy also, apart from explosives, it also varies directly as the square of the velocity. So it's, yeah.
You don't want to get hit.
yeah, 2 Onyxes, they will probably break the target, such as the Ticonderoga class cruiser, in half. I mean, it's gonna sink pretty fast. I mean, so that's extremely dangerous thing.
Yeah. Well, Andre, thank you very much. Certainly appreciate it. I got to get ready to run. I actually got to do a radio show at 6 p.m. in Washington, D.C. and deal with these crazy callers every week. I got one guy that calls every week to tell me that the Democrats are better than the Republicans, and it's all Trump's fault.
They both suck.
Yeah, like, you know, come on. And it's all Trump. It's all Trump. It's all Trump. And I say Trump is terrible, but if Trump disappeared tomorrow, this stuff wouldn't stop. But you know, that's the cross we all bear, right, of dealing with this stuff.
Yeah.
But at any rate, thanks a lot, Andre. Don't forget, everybody, you can find Andre. It's Smoothie X12. That's the name of his YouTube show. Reminiscence of the Future. That is his website. That is his blog. And one of the things that we were talking about today was the U.S. losing military supremacy. Guess what? He has a book. All of his books, go to his blog, Reminiscence of the Future. Go right down the side. You'll see all of his books. Make sure you get his book. The one we were talking about today was called Losing Military Supremacy. He was way ahead of the game. So if you can afford it, you know, buy me a coffee, Patreon, you know, PayPal, that kind of stuff. That'd be great. Even if you can't, the most important thing you can do is share this on all your social media platforms. Thanks a lot. We're out.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks a lot.